So we've got a lot to talk about today. The subject is going to be seeds, something of which I know nothing of. So I'm very excited.
And I'm Chef Jonathan Frazier, and we're talking with Good Earth Farm and Seeds.
Boom! My name is William Stringer, and this is the Edible Valley Podcast.
Do you ever wonder where your food comes from? That's what got us started on this adventure.
In each episode, we ask experts to weigh in on the food topics that matter to you, from growers to producers to chefs.
And I challenge John, Darren, and you to learn more about your food and the stories behind it. From our hub on Vancouver Island in the beautiful Comox Valley, join us as we explore our Edible Valley. Hello to you, this is William Stringer. I'm the producer, I'm also a realtor and a radio host for 98.9 Jet FM.
And I'm Chef Jonathan Frazier and owner of Locals Restaurant here in the Comox Valley.
So excited today. We're going to be learning about something that I know nothing about, which is kind of what happens every week, gradually getting there. But we've got Simon from Good Earth Farms.
Hi, welcome.
How's it going, mate?
Good, how are you?
Really good, thank you very much.
Good.
Yeah, we're just here. We're going to throw you right on the spot.
Okay, nice. Yeah, perfect.
You got your tea. You're ready.
I'm ready.
Oh, excellent stuff. Well, what we were talking about when I first met Simon was actually during the pandemic. That was my first experience of seeds. I worked in a grocery store called Edible Island, and I remember everyone running in desperately looking for seeds. And it was that time during the pandemic when everyone was planting borders, and it was flower borders and planting stuff. It was pretty glorious in that sense that you just knew everyone was being connected to their food more. We were running out of seeds. What was that time like for you?
It was a bit of a crazy time for us. Yeah, like it's hard when you run a small business and then all of a sudden you just have to overnight almost just try to scale it up and try to find new ways to connect with your customers and reinvent your whole business model, and just so much uncertainty. But yeah, like really good for business. But like I was saying, it's a bit like you never really want your business to grow because of an event like that, or like you would hope that you would have there would just be more awareness and organic growth to it rather than having like something thrust upon you like that. But that is basically kind of really when seeds have become popular. Like even back to like the Second World War, there was a huge a much bigger seed industry. Like it was actually a noticeable portion of the agricultural output of BC was seeds, and so that was the last time actually that like seeds has been a significant part of the agriculture output of the province. And then during the pandemic, things kind of scaled up again, not nearly to the scale of the Second World War, but like it's hard when those kind of like world events thrust you onto the spotlight, but it's nice. But then I would say since then things have kind of calmed down a bit. Like during the middle of that, we were all like, I wonder if this is gonna like keep going, and like because you don't, it's glorious, right? You don't have to do any marketing. Like people are just beating down your door, right? And, so it's nice in that sense, but it's also like a bit disconcerting in terms of like the overall seed security, like that kind of tested the system, and I think we really found out that we're pretty lacking.
Right.
So yeah, that's a bit scary as a producer, and it's great for business, but it's scary as well.
Yeah.
Well, let's get in and let's. Can you just describe the farm so that people understand what we're talking about here?
Yeah. So we started. So I started saving seeds probably like 25 years ago. And then I met my partner, and we were just kind of like broke hippies moving around and doing our thing. And like the first thing I ever took Heather was a basket of flowers, and like the first thing we ever talked about was tomato seeds. And so we're pretty much seed geeks right from the start. And we moved around quite a bit, and then we started caretaking a farm in Black Creek. And that's when we started. So during that whole journey, we've always saved seeds, but it's been a smaller part of our business. And then, we started doing the Comox Valley Farmers Market, and that was really revolutionary in terms of trying to grow our business, because it was such a supportive atmosphere, and like there's mentorship, and there's We started very small, and so we started out doing a wide range of things, but lots of veg, and a little bit of fruit, and then gradually we got our own farm in 2004.
Wow.
Yeah, and again, seeds were always a part of what we did, but we did a lot of strawberries, a lot of garlic, a lot of mixed veg. And then probably about 3 years ago, we forgot about everything else, and now we just do seeds. So we grow about 65 varieties of mostly heirloom, open pollinated, certified organic seeds now. It's been a really good journey. It's nice to kind of just like focus in on one thing and like it's not just one thing, actually. Like I say, it's 65 things. So it's like, that's kind of enough to wrap your head around, and like, just getting more dialed into like trying to scale up some varieties and produce them in bigger quantities, and trying to keep your quality up and just trying to learn more. And that's really the most enjoyable thing about it, is like we're 25 years in and we're still learning a lot every day, right? Wow. So that's kind of a neat part of it.
When you went to not doing fruit and veg and just doing seeds, what changed for you when you had that focus?
It was, for us, it was like, for me, it's just like, I'm not that old yet, but I'm getting older. And like, I've seen a lot of farmers just go full steam till the end, and it's just hard. And so we kind of wanted to just refocus, I think. And like, we realized we were kind of we kind of sat down and we're like, what are we really passionate about in this whole picture here? And seeds has always been the constant of probably the most passionate thing we've been. So so that's really changed it. It's just kind of like, I would say, like, I thought the work would slightly decrease and like and the passion would increase, and the passion has increased, but the work has still stayed the same. It's just different, and
it never stops.
It's just a different kind of hustle, So that's mainly what's changed for us. And but it has been really nice to just focus in on the seeds and really kind of bring them to the front of what we do. And
I think that was a good decision. I think focusing on your absolute passion, doing something really, really well, and being known for that one thing, that's a good decision.
It is, because at the end of the day, like, all farming is pretty much like, you call it farm businesses, but they're like, I call it more like farm passion projects, or like, it's more like a social enterprise, or like, you have to be driven by passion to farm at all, in any sense, I believe. And in anything in food, whether it's a restaurant or anything in the food spaces, I think it's coming around now a lot more, which is really heartening. But like, it's just a ton of work, and you're kind of underappreciated, and we're used to a system where it's like, in the economics of it, you're fundamentally undervalued, whatever space you're in food. I feel like from farming to the end of trying to sell it, or trying to run a restaurant, or trying to do any of that, right? I think we fundamentally underappreciate where food comes from and the effort that it takes to to get it to people, right? Like,
even over the last few years, when it's become very trendy for restaurants to say, this is the name of the food, where this farm had made this kale for us and it's in this dish, and that's great, but I don't recall anyone saying this is where the seed came from. So you've really got that.
And that is the interesting piece. And like, I've done a few different presentations and taken a fair bit of training over this winter, and like, it is really interesting story, seed, because it is like, even within the farming community or the gardening community, like, there is not really there's a growing awareness, but like, there's fundamentally not really an awareness of where's your seed coming from, right? And like, even, I'm not going to start calling out seed companies, but like, your average seed company is mostly sourcing, your medium to bigger seed company is kind of sourcing seed on basically mostly North American, but often even a worldwide market. And it's all about where that seed can be produced easily, for kind of the cost of it, but also sometimes for the logistics of it, for the climate of it. But it leaves you very vulnerable. So like we were talking about with the pandemic, like, most local farms around here, they're sourcing their seed, mostly from big American, or not big, but kind of medium scale, I would say, kind of American seed companies. And so you're very reliant on that stream, right? And we do not have in BC and in Canada, we're pretty lacking in terms of like kind of seed security or seed sovereignty, we call it as well. So like this year, for example, the border got shut off to cover crop seed. So you can't get cover crop seed from the States this year.
So they said there's an export ban.
Yeah, it's a CFIA. There was a disease issue, and they didn't want to like infect some of the prairie. They were worried about some of the prairies. So there was disease issues in some of it. So they just shut down all cover crop seed from the States. Okay. So similar to the pandemic, like if that happens with vegetable seeds, we'd be really, really scrambling. And in BC, there's about 30 of us that are kind of small scale companies where we're producing the seed and then we sell it, or it's like a cooperative of farms that are kind of pooling together and selling seed. So we're pretty good in terms of like, at least we have some supply for kind of the gardener level, but for the farm level, we're like shockingly dependent on this worldwide market that's very vulnerable.
I have to admit, like I've been talking with a few of my farmers and sitting down and and we do a lot of planning for saying like, this is what I want. And it's a little bit of him of doing, or some of the farmers I work with, them reaching out to these other places to get the amount of seed that they require is very difficult. And it's not just one person or one stop to get it. He's going like 6 or 7 different places. Yeah. Exactly. And then the quality of seeds from different places is all over the board too. It's so totally, actually, when you approached me about, hey, we should do a podcast, I was like, oh, that's awesome, because I was just starting to get into this and hear this.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I was like, this is crazy. Like, how do we grow seeds, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and how do you not, like, it's obvious to me being in the space, right? But it's, so when you're in the space, it's like, it seems painfully obvious to me, but it's like, how do you explain that to other people? And like I say, even like from gardeners right to farmers, I think there's a growing awareness, but it's like, I think unfortunately, like the farmers have, like you say, have had these issues trying to source now. So there's starting to think about it more, right? And it's, and it is, to be honest, to be fair too, though, it is like, there is sometimes like, there is sometimes quality, even at a smaller scale, there is quality issues, or it's the amounts that they need, right? And so there is, it's not like, I'm not trying to like call out to the farmers or like saying, but it's, I think it's just a neat conversation to have now, and that trying to spread that awareness, right? That like, yeah, you got to think like that really, like we always say it's a bit like, obviously we're seed growers, but it's like, there's no food security or food sovereignty without seed sovereignty, right? Like that's the start of the whole thing, right? So if you don't control the seeds, you don't, and so that's really interesting.
I find it great when restaurants are looking at farmers and saying, what have you got? Because it goes back to the very beginning of going to the market with what you've got, and then people saying, right, what can we make from these things? And that is so much more of a sustainable way to do it. And then a decent chef will make stuff from what you've got and adapt recipes they've got from what you've got. And that's what places like Locals and the Atlas tend to do. But no one ever thinks to that stage before it with the seeds. And well, that's where that is coming from.
Yeah, and it is like you say, it's a kind of a step back, but there's like the interesting thing too is like, I mean, when you talk of like commercial, like it's so hard because there's so many vastly different scales, but like when you bring it down to the really local level, that's one of the coolest things about being smaller and like working so closely and having like great relationships like Locals, and has always cultivated those relationships so well. But like, if you take tomatoes, like there's thousands of kinds of tomatoes out there, right? Or there's like, I don't know how much people appreciate that like you kind of get locked into these varieties that are commercially grown and they do really well in high production, this kind of modern food system we have. But there's just like such an array of like neat and cool things out there that never really get to, aren't kind of commercially viable, but on a smaller scale are viable and just taste way better and just different attributes, because so much of the commercial stuff gets selected on like, okay, it's all got to ripen at the same time. We got to be able to ship it a few thousand miles, and like there's those kind of attributes that they're selecting for, rather than like, what does this taste like, and like what is this like? Yeah, how is this different than?
Yeah, there's a value in how far and how long can we ship this compared to how good this tastes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what actually makes my job easier, when I can go to a local farmer and be like, "What's your best tomato?"
Yeah.
And then put that on a hamburger, and people are like, "Whoa!"
That actually adds something to it.
Yeah.
Instead of this piece of cardboard that's perfectly shapen and been sitting on a truck for 6 months. So
do you call them heritage tomatoes and heritage vegetables?
So I'm not huge on so there's in the seeds there's like a whole bunch of like really geeky definitions, and I can't really give you so heirloom is kind of basically something that's been around for a few heirloom, heritage, they've been around for a few generations, and so that's kind of where that comes in. So some varieties are kind of newer, and they've been bred, or they've had some work done on them, or some breeding, and those are kind of newer. So those wouldn't really be heritage. So a lot of the stuff we do, not everything, but most things are heritage. So they've been around for a few generations, kind of passed down. And then so that's kind of the definition of that. And then the other big one in what we do is the difference between open pollinated. There's basically kind of like, to make it really simplified, there's like, now there's kind of three different seeds. There's open pollinated, which is what we do. And in a nutshell, but that means basically like, if you grow it and you kind of know what you're doing, and you isolate it correctly and so on, then you can plant that seed. You could take that seed, you could buy that seed from me and take it home, and you could save that seed, and it's going to be roughly the same thing.
Okay,
So a hybrid seed is basically, you've taken two completely different parents and you've put them together, and you basically kind of, for lack of a better term, you create a teenager, and they're like, they're really awesome, right? They perform well. They have certain, they're typically bred for like, the two parents have traits that are like they ship well, or or it could be any variation of traits that they're after. But generally those hybrids, they have in a lot of cases, they have what's called like hybrid vigor. So they're like, they tend to grow well, and they tend to have high yields. They tend to be very consistent in terms of like, say broccoli is a good example. Like if you take an old open pollinated broccoli, you're gonna get broccoli, but it might ripen over a 3-week. You might get a head 1 week, and then it might be 2 weeks until the rest of them. Whereas a hybrid will be a nice uniform crop. Within a week, they're all gonna mature. They're gonna be nice and big. And so there's a lot of benefits to hybrids. The downside to hybrids, especially from a seed saving point, is that if you plant that, if you were to take that home, if you buy that seed, you take it home, you plant that, you're not going to be able to save the seed from it. It's going to revert back to one of its genetic. It's going to revert back in its genetics, and it might freakishly work out, but it might. Typically, it doesn't work out, right? And you get something weird. So hybrid is a very closed, and most, even organic farms, like most, I would say, I don't know the breakdown of it, but a significant part of most farms now are.
Wow, that's getting.
And there's nothing particularly wrong with it, but like I say, you're susceptible. You're going back every year to buy that hybrid. Yeah, it's because of those, and especially certain things like, say, broccoli. There's certain varieties like there's lots of open pollinated lettuce. There's lots of things that the open pollinated will fare as well or better, but there's lots of things that the hybrids, and it's just that consistency.
Do you think
right?
that's why they're doing
when
it?
You're in these big even the small scale organic or natural farms we have around here, like the amount of stuff they produce is just mind boggling, and they're in very tight rotations, and they're just like salad greens, or like the amount of vegetables and so on they can churn out is just like so impressive. But you really need that consistency, right? And so that's where the hybrids really come in. And then further than that, you have the GMOs, which is basically you're taking genes from something completely, it could be from something completely different. It could be another variety, it could be another species, it could be fish genes in a tomato, right? And so that's really, that's really a whole nother level of like, and again, you're reliant on buying that every year. And the danger with GMOs is once you release them out there, once they kind of leave the lab, then they can cross with your open pollinated seed. And so from a seed saving point, it's just a nightmare, because my varieties that I've been saving for however long and have been around for probably thousands of years, some of them before that, could be contaminated and you lose them, right? And so that's really, and the argument for GMOs is we have to feed this growing population and all of these things, but really there's a lot of inherent danger to it. And fundamentally, it's back to like you're at the mercy of whoever is selling you that seed. And farmers have even been sued for collecting their own seed, but that GMO drifted in and contaminated their seed, and they got sued because you're not allowed to save the seed of that GMO. So there's a lot of shady. So you have this very like, it's like anything in food. You have this like, we're just tiny little seed company and we have this nice little farm in Black Creek and we do our thing. And you have all the way up to like, you know, the I guess they're Bayer now. It used to be Monsanto, or you have global corporations who are after control and monopoly and all kinds of scary things, right? So that's kind of the whole gamut, like that's the whole spectrum of seed in a nutshell, but not to freak everybody out, but yeah, no, it does, unfortunately, yeah.
You are fighting a very, very good fight.
Oh, thank you, yeah.
Wow.
when I first met you a few minutes ago, when I first met you, I was just like, seeds, that's lovely. And then it's like, goes the same way as everything.
So we have started to like because
but you are fighting a very, very good fight by the sound of it.
So,
well, here's a good question. Let's go back to your actual, the farm and stuff. Like, so how many seeds are you producing a year?
Like,
Do you
so not huge, but like enough that like, and it's like enough for us and enough for what we want to do, and we have to kind of manage our rotation and our crossing, cross-pollinating and things like that. But so and some things are a bit smaller amount, so we've kind of identified some things that we want to sell a bit more of, and so we've kind of ramped up production of that. But we do about 65 varieties, like I said, and then of those, there's probably like 12, 15 that are kind of more at a bigger, scale. But like again, like that, back to that comparison, like 80 kilos in the world market is a drop, but like for us, it's a lot. It's more than we've ever done. So it's like,
to clarify, is that 80 kilos in seeds?
Of seed, yeah.
That is a lot.
Yeah, so pea seeds are a bit bigger, luckily, so that you got some weight there to help you along. But like, let it. Mostly during cleaning, actually. Cleaning is all about like screens and blowing, basically.
Seeds are tiny.
So
you
can lose a lot of seed if you're not careful cleaning, I guess.
Right.
But
do you ever have do they ever blow away? Like you ever? Oh no, we forgot to weigh them down.
But luckily we don't lose too much. But it's like any type of farming, you kind of sweat in the fall when it's like you're kind of hoping for some nice weather gaps to kind of like so you don't get any mold or like.
And then your neighbours must just be like, where the hell did these sugar snaps come from?
You basically have to grow your vegetables and everything, and then you got to let it go to seed. And so that's a longer process. So it's a bit. Sometimes a bit. It's a bit nip and tuck in the fall for sure, like trying to get stuff in before the rain, especially on the coast. It's there's certain seed that does well here, but it's not always the best environment to grow seed because of that needing that nice fall. But
right.
Mostly outside. Yeah, we do have some greenhouse. There's tomatoes we do in the greenhouse just for blight and stuff. And then there is some seed that's like a 2-year process. So like your chard and kale, we basically plant in August and let it overwinter, and then harvest.
Well, I was going to say,
year.
is most of your seed
so we do
done
that
outside
in the
or
greenhouse,
greenhouses?
and then
or?
like say beets is a 2-year process.
Mostly.
You grow a beet basically, you store it for the winter, and then you plant it out. And usually we plant it out into the greenhouse. So some seed, and definitely some of the seed. It's nice to have it in the greenhouse for the shelter, but then it gets pretty humid in there too sometimes. So it's like it's always hard to find the perfect balance of stuff. But yeah.
And the weather, you mentioned the weather. What is the perfect weather?
Nice.
Ooh. Well, it doesn't often happen. Let's just put it that way, like all farmers. And we love to complain about the weather. But yeah, for us, it would be like, having a nice spring where you can get stuff in at a decent time.
And the weather,
and
you
having
mentioned the
kind
weather.
of, we don't need anything crazy in the summer, but kind of having a fairly decent summer. And then, just having those, like, we have actually gotten quite lucky. Like last summer was really late getting in to a lot of fields and really late start, but then we had that really nice fall that really helped us. And so that's really ideal because a lot of seed is ripening in kind of September. Usually by the end of September we've got most things harvested, but last year it was more like early October.
Well, yeah, last autumn, a lot of fields are really September, or even into October.
Yeah.
So that's really really nice. Basically, summer weather, that helps.
It did, because basically you have everything out there kind of in this. And you basically have to. There's
last autumn,
at a certain point you can start pulling stuff in, but you really have to be patient because that's the number one thing is you have this.
80s,
you walk out there
really,
and you can
really
see
nice.
seed and it
Basically
looks ripe.
summer weather,
But you
but
really have to let it ripen kind of on the plant or on the vine. It really needs that last process to, like, if you pull it too early, it's just not going to be viable seed. It looks like seed and it's formed and it can look fine, but if you're impatient and you pull it in too soon, then it's just not going to be viable because it's not ready yet. So you really have to let it ripen kind of on the plant or on the vine. It really needs that last process to, like, if you pull it too early, it's just not going to be viable seed. It looks like seed and it's formed and it can look fine, but if you're impatient and you pull it in too soon, then it's just not going to be viable because it's not ready yet. So.
Well, I mean, I've learned something. Thank you so much.
One of the things that I've learned a lot about now lately is just like one of the things I always love to mention is like the fact that like basically all of these crops that we grow ourselves, or like most of the crops that we rely on for farming nowadays, basically have indigenous roots. So like we tend to think of like we were talking about heirlooms earlier, and we talked about seeds that's been handed down in families and through generations, and that kind of comes. We have this kind of very white colonial picture of farming, and no disrespect to that, but then like basically indigenous cultures all over the world basically were the original farmers, and when you think of farming as being some like manipulating something to create abundance, if you kind of think of that definition, but even in terms of like say corn was grown like first cultivated like 8,500 years ago in Mexico, so you think of that, and so like for 8,500 years each year somebody saved that seed. Somebody did some breeding work, somebody created new varieties. Like there's probably thousands of varieties of corn now. So I think it's really important to acknowledge the indigenous contribution to all these seeds we grow, and that's something we're working a lot on now, is how to represent that, how to respect that, how to pay how to pay homage to that. And it's something that even myself, like it only in the last 5-6 years has that really come to my awareness. And I was mentioning, like, I did some training this winter even on, and heard some really amazing speakers from all over the world talking about things like that. And we tend to have this especially in farming, we tend to think, when you think of farmers, you think of like some white dude on a tractor with a straw hat and jeans and a plaid shirt, right? And like, and that's like, and it, not to disrespect that heritage at all, because there's a lot of good that's come out of the settler heritage, but like, and again, back to that story of like, it's like the story of seeds. It's like, like there has been cases where like seed was outright stolen from indigenous cultures, and Indian agents went in and like outright stole seed so that they would be dependent on buying seed. And like, it is a pretty sad and mixed story, but also a story of like, it's pretty neat to like, in seeds, like how long this, like to realize the extension of that history. It's not just like we think we're pretty cool because we've done this 25 years, right? But it's like 8,500 years of seed saving has gone into what we do, right? Yeah. So to think of it that way is pretty special, and to like, it really gives you a sense of like awe and wonder and like respect for like all that's kind of gone before you. And like, we're just kind of like, we've benefited from so much to be where we are. And like, it's hard what we do, but it's also like, it's also pretty cool and pretty like, we have it way easier than they did, thousands of years ago. So it's like, we take a lot for granted too now, right? So
I think it is very important what you're saying, because quite literally it was people for centuries and centuries passing on that knowledge, doing the legwork, and allowing us to be where we are now. And so I have great respect for that. And we also have gratitude for the lovely folks at Comox First Nations, and that is their unceded territory we're on right now. And we're really grateful for that. Yeah. So perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah, it was so enjoyable. Thank you both for having me.
I think before you go, we need to do a little plug so people know where to get your seeds.
Oh, okay. Oh, boy. I wasn't prepared. You've
got the swag. You're actually wearing Good Earth Farms top.
So you can, like during the pandemic, we created an online store, so you can shop there, and we have both like gardener amounts, and we have bulk amounts too online. We also are in, I'm going to forget some retailers, so I apologize if I forget you, but we're in the new Garden Works. We're in the local refillery. We're in the Bloomery out in Black Creek. We're in the French Creek Home Hardware. We're in Wildwood in Victoria. We have a stand sometimes at Clever Crow Farm Store.
Oh yeah, I love Clever Crow.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Good friends. Yes.
Yeah, and then that's mostly how to get our seed. And then we do also do Seedy Saturday events up and down the island. And then we do a short window of the Comox Valley Farmers Market.
Great.
Yeah, and then we also sell our seeds through the BC Eco Seed Co-op. Who is a co-op of about 20 producers from BC who pooled together, and they mostly sell kind of mostly available online through an online store as well. Okay. Yeah.
Excellent. And website?
www.goodearthfarms.ca.
Oh, you got the big one. Good man. And you on Facebook?
Yes, we have a Facebook and Instagram, and my wife's going to kill me, but I don't know them.
That's fine.
Good Earth Farm Seeds. Probably,
Excellent. Yeah. Simon from Good Earth Farms, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you both. Yeah,
we've learned so much today. I really appreciate it.
Check in with you again soon. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And that wraps up another episode of the Edible Valley podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and a special thanks goes to the local businesses that help support our podcast. They make it possible for us to showcase your local food community. We'd love you to follow us on your preferred social media at Edible Valley, where you can check out our blog, find recipes and tips, behind the scenes, and of course keep a lookout for where we are going to turn up next in your Edible Valley.
Hour of nothing.
Oh no, really?
One of our first recordings, we did Tree Island yogurt at the radio station. And it was great because we got into about 15 minutes of a conversation and the whole system shut down. And then we rambled on for another 15 minutes. This has been our Produce Valley production. Yeah. Beep, 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 beep.
Okay, ready again?